Welcome back to the Dentist Who Invest podcast. Everybody been looking forward to this episode for a while with my good friend Dr. Simal Shah talking about how he took his dental practices from where they were to where they are. And the reason that I say that is I know where they are. Where they were has been an amazing journey of progress. It's been quite the adventure. Where they are is that Simal is currently sitting on two dental practices. And Simal, correct me if I'm wrong, the cumulative turnover of those practices is 2.5 million. Is that right? Or is that in each one?
Yeah, so we're at a cumulative turnover of 2.5 million
So
now,
cool.
and that is grown significantly over the past at least 3 years, and it's been an incredible journey.
Very cool. And much wisdom and knowledge gained along the way, no doubt.
Oh yeah, and a few
Oh,
less
yeah.
hairs. Yeah,
All of the wisdom, all of the wisdom. So,
yeah,
Simon, for the people listening to this podcast who have yet to meet you, it might be nice for you to do a little bit of an intro.
yeah. So my name is Simal. I am a principal of two practices in near Southend. So one is in a town called Benfleet, and one is in a town called Leon C. I started my journey of practice ownership in 2011, and it was actually forced upon me, whereby I had another business in the dental supplies industry, which was an incredible business. It grew really well. And unfortunately, it was a partnership that the partnership didn't work out. So I decided to pull out. And then I went back into practice ownership, and we bought a practice with very few UDAs. The some of the dentists were going home at lunchtime, and that was where it was. And at that time, that practice was a three-chair practice, turning over about 500,000. And then over various things like marketing, patient, training the reception team, growing the practice. We grew it to about 750 now turnover, and that then enabled me to purchase a second practice, literally 15 minutes away, which again was turning up over about 550,000 at that time. And today, that second practice is actually doing bulk of our revenue of about 1.8 now. So that has really grown well over the past few years. And yeah, it's been an incredible journey, lots of ups and downs. But like with ownership, it's two steps up, one step down, and but it's been amazing. It's been amazing. Yeah.
That's very cool. And just off camera, before we hit record in this podcast, you were telling me that you got your first practice when you were really, really, really young, the age of 29.
Yeah, I was fortunate, and the right place came up, and I just took up. Honestly, it was a gut instinct decision. Something felt right about it, and it. I said I just have to go for it, and it actually worked out. It had a really nice team at that time as well, and a lot of the team over the years obviously have retired, but it was great to start in that practice, and for me that is still my effectively first baby. And then the second practice came along, and that is where we've grown quite well, because that's been a predominantly private practice. The other one was more a mixed practice with a reasonable and small NHS base, but then we had to grow the NHS base. Luckily, we got more UDAs there, and that from then on has been growing well on the NHS and the mixed side, and the other practice has been growing really well on the private side.
Nice one. Congratulations. And you know what? It's interesting because I remember when I was in dentistry and whenever I was around about the age of 28, I always thought that I'd probably buy a dental practice at some point further down the line. But I had this limiting belief back then. I've since learned that the terminology to describe what I was going through is known as limiting beliefs. What are limiting beliefs? They're beliefs that limit you. They're not necessarily true or false, they're just beliefs that limit you, right? And my belief was I had to hit a certain level of clinical expertise before I bought my first dental practice. Biggest load of flipping nonsense that I only realized subsequently whenever I left dentistry and started running Dentists Who Invest and started interviewing lots of dentists via the podcast to find out mentally where the young guns who set up their dental practices very early in their career were at, and they just don't have this limiting belief. Are you with me? So I met one chap, and his name is Jamil Tarofdar. And for anybody who hasn't heard that podcast, the guy is 28 and he's got three flipping dental practices.
Wow.
Are you
Wow.
that
Amazing.
is crackers, isn't
That is
it?
amazing.
So,
Yeah.
and here's the thing, that doesn't mean we all have to be like that. That's an outlier. Are you with me?
Yeah.
But to bring it back to this conversation, 29-year-old Simmel, right? What was 29-year-old Simmel's mindset at the time? Was it just like, let's just go for it, let's do it? And what would you say to that younger version of you if you could go back and speak to him now? What words of advice or encouragement would you give him?
So 29-year-old Simal had actually been out of clinical dentistry for 4 years and
No
had,
way.
yeah,
No
and,
way.
and had
That's
been
crazy.
busy selling dental products. So, and growing that business. And 29-year-old Simal was very quickly brought into the clinical world. And in a strange way, I loved getting back into it. It was really nice to even pick up that first handpiece and open up that first tooth to get a patient out of pain after all those years. And it actually felt right to be there.
Cool.
29-year-old Simal, I would say, firstly, you have to trust your gut. And when you get that gut instinct, follow your gut, follow your dreams, and things will work out. And not being clinically there is not a reason not to purchase your first practice. The clinical side is important, yes, but it's having a good team around you. And that team and that group of other dentists, other, even the nurses, the receptionists, really drive you, and they encourage me from day one. They knew where I had been. They knew what my limitations were, and they I really worked well with that team to build up my clinical skills again. I went on so many courses, just building, and slowly I started to do more and more advanced stuff, and with confidence and competence. But it's having the team around you that is so important.
Flipping cool, right? And here's the thing, here's another cool aspect to it, which I'm sure you appreciate. Through running your dental supply business, you probably learned a ton of business wisdom that you could apply to the dental practice as well. What would you
Yes.
say those pearls were, those little bits of wisdom that helped you in the next leg of your career, which was to buy this dental practice at 29? What would you say those were?
So the beauty of being in the dental supplies business, it taught me that, when you're a dental practice, you're used to patients coming to you. You don't have to go out to patients to find them and to bring them at that time. But it actually taught me a lot about marketing and how you can go about marketing a business, any business. Whereas at that time, dental practices marketing was a taboo word, or it was just starting to come out into the forefront. But I was, in a way, one step ahead from that point. The other thing, being in a supplies business, I learned cash flow is king. You need cash in the business to be able to grow and develop a business. Regardless of borrowings and everything else, you need cash in the business. And my main ethos at that time was recirculate as much cash within the business as you can, because that is how you grow business. And bringing that from dental supplies into dental practice, those two things were really important. The other thing is your team. You have to work really well in that team. Yes, you are the principal or you're the leader, and people should respect you for being the leader, but you have to also show that mutual respect going back. And for example, I was spending a morning on reception just to learn how reception works,
Very good.
answering calls, answering, putting, at that time we were paper based, so putting records away, just to learn how that whole bit works, because it allows you to find out where the bottlenecks are, where the issues are. And when your receptionist come to say, oh, hang on, this just isn't working, or, it's easy to dismiss it as, okay, so what, it's not working. Or, hang on, I'm doing it. Yes, I know it's not working. This is where I need to solve these problems and help in efficiencies. And yeah, it was an incredible lesson. Incredible.
That's flipping cool. Okay, next leg of the career, the second leg, whenever you got the dental practice up and running. So naturally, a little bit of a trial by fire because you just jumped in. And I get that you had this business wisdom and experience from the dental products company, and then you took a lot of that into the dental practices, right? What did you find? What were the key things that you learned in those first few years? Because naturally, here's the thing, in any business, a lot of it is trial and error, especially at the
Yeah.
beginning, right? And wisdom, what wisdom actually is being able to expedite someone's journey through that trial and error process. Because instead of spending 1 year trial and erroring something to find out the result, you can just tell someone what to do, and you just sped their career up by a year. And there'll be lots of people who's listening to this podcast who feel exactly like that, either who own a dental practice or have yet to buy their first dental practice. So this is why what's about to come out of your mouth, I have no doubt, will be of huge value to those people.
So first, there's obviously several parts of running a dental practice, and I learned about the staffing side, about getting the right people on board. My nature at that time was very much you need everybody to be happy in the team. And I realized later on that you cannot please everybody. And there are certain team members, regardless of what you try and what you do, who will not be happy and who will eventually leave. And that's not a bad thing. But you need a good team of focused individuals around you. And don't be afraid to say no to hiring somebody, or don't be afraid that, and never, don't live in that constant fear that this person's going to leave, this person's going to leave, this person's going to leave if I do this. And that held me back a lot because I was constantly living in that fear. And that wasn't a good thing. Secondly, I made a lot of costly mistakes as far as marketing went because I kept on throwing money, jumping from agency to agency, looking for the best kind of way around, trying to almost, and I will admit it, is that I was looking for the cheapest marketing solution and wanted the most out of it, which is totally against everything we do now. We spend good money now and we get a very good result now. But at that time, it was all about, who is the cheapest. And then why was I surprised when I was getting only one Invisalign lead every so often? And even that wasn't very good quality. So, that was what I learned very quickly. And like I said before, it's about spending time in the business initially. You have to be at the coalface, learning exactly what is going on at each and every step of the patient journey, each and every step of the business. And again, having two practices with a bit of clinical time, I realized that having that time away from clinical, but spending it on reception, spending it with your nurses, spending it with all your team, you learn so much about what goes on. They are your eyes and ears, and having that open communication with them is so important.
Cool. And you know what? What I'm going to do in just a minute is get really in depth with those specific lessons that you learned through undertaking those steps, as in when you shadowed at reception and whenever you did this and you did that and you got really involved in the business. The takeaways from that, that's where I feel the real gold dust is going to be in this podcast. But I want to share something with you first and with everybody who's listening. This is something that I heard recently, which I learned this from a business mentor, someone that I brought into what I do, one of a few mentors that I have in the background. And he just described this concept very eloquently that I was aware of, and it makes total sense, but I've never heard it described like this. And I hope that you like this, Simal, as much as me, because this is flipping cool. So somebody said to me, this is what they said to me recently, and it's obvious, but the best bits of wisdom are obvious. Yeah. They're instantly understandable, and you can take it and use it straight away, right? So here's the thing. If you want to increase profit, very deliberate with my words, profit, not necessarily turnover. Turnover can be a component of profit, but not always, but specifically profit. There's only actually 3 fundamental ways that you can do it, right? This is cool.
Yeah.
Whether you're Coca-Cola, whether you're Tesco's, whether you are, name any company in the whole wide world, insert company name here, a haulage company, whatever, or you're a dental practice, or if you're even an associate, right? Because an associate is a business as well. It's just that there's not as many cogs and moving parts as a dental practice, but you are a business. You're literally self-employed, right? Yeah. Anyway, okay, cool. So here's the thing. If you want to increase profit and you're a business, there's only 3 ways that you can do it, right? First way, decrease your costs.
Yes.
Obviously, right? If you're spending less on something every month, then what it means is that you have more profit, of course, but you can only do that so much. You can't decrease your cost to 0 if you want to keep your business running long term, you're going to have some outgoings. Every business has outgoings, right? And it's about being a little smart about it, like what you said. Like if you look for the cheapest, you'll get the cheapest. You know what I mean? Right? Yeah. This is where we have to use our intuition. Sometimes we want to spend more to make more, right? Abundance mindset, right? And we pay lip service to that a lot, but not everybody does it necessarily, right? And I would actually rather spend more on something which I know is going to mean that I have to think way less about it and do a better job for me and actually bring more revenue in, which often happens whenever you just look for the person who's the best value rather than the cheapest, because they're two different things. Yeah. Anyway, or not even necessarily the best value, somebody who offers really good value at a reasonable price, and you remunerate them to a level that they deserve effectively. So they're more of a premium rather than value versus bargain. But anyway, let's not get into that. So the first one is you reduce your costs. Second way you can increase profit in your business is serve more customers. Now, who's your customers when you're a dental practice? It's the patients, of course. And we have to remember that dentistry is a caring profession. So we serve patients, not customers. Very important distinction. Here's the thing. You want to serve more patients, then you might have to open more days in your book. You might have to open Sundays. You might have to get more dentists, all of those things, right? Do we necessarily want to do that if we're already working 7 days a week? If we've got a good rhythm to the practice, do we want to squeeze more patients into the same amount of time? No, we don't. Because that can make more issues for a dental practice potentially, particularly if people feel rushed, because patients hate that. So we can't always do it. If we're Coca-Cola, we can, right? We can go to a new market. We can make more tins of Coke and ship more, and more people buy them, right? In a dental practice, not always. Maybe if we're working 3 days a week and we start working 4, okay, that's a reasonable area. That's a reasonable occasion into which we can insert that wisdom to use that wisdom to increase the profitability in our practice. That's the second way. So here's the thing. The second way that can be used by businesses to increase their profit doesn't actually always necessarily work for dental practices, but we have to be aware of it, right? What's the third way? The third way is that you can increase the value of each patient to the practice, right? Now, how does that work? It's about having conversations with them about their dental care, understanding what their needs are, diagnosing correctly what's going on in their mouth so that we can treat them effectively, and a lot more things on top of that as well. But those are the main things, right? So fundamentally, if you want to increase your profit as a practice or as an associate, then you have to use one of those 3 ways, because those are the only 3 ways. You can only reduce your cost so much. Remember, you can only reduce your cost so much. You can't necessarily always see more patients because there's only so many hours in the week. So the only other way is to increase the value of each patient. And maybe that means investing in yourself, getting some new skills so you can serve them to a higher standard, right? Maybe that means becoming more efficient clinically. Maybe that means delegating more stuff. Are you with me? But it has to be one of those 3 things. And I thought that was flipping cool. With me. And on that exact thing, Simal, obviously, naturally, taking your business's turnovers from where they were to where they are, it'll be a combination of those 3 things. So let's segue back to what I said just a second ago. What were those tangible takeaways from you spending time working in the business almost so that you could come out of the business, so that you could understand what's happening from a higher level? Because I think that's really cool. And not a lot of people appreciate the importance of that. They think to themselves, well, if I'm on reception, well, then I'm wasting a morning that I could have been in clinic, right? It's kind of like we just see things like this. We're not seeing the bigger picture. We're not seeing that the wisdom could make the business 10 times more efficient and then therefore enhance profitability a lot more over a slightly longer time frame than what we would earn short term in the dental practice being in the clinic. Boom.
So key takeaway from, say, for example, spending time on reception. Firstly, it allows the team to see that, hang on, you're not in a hierarchical situation whereby the principal is at the top, so I can't answer the call and I can't be on reception. We're all at the same level. It's not this, principal or management versus everybody else. And that is one thing which I have always advocated against. Yes, there has to be leadership, there has to be decisions, but you have to be willing to do all the work within the practice. Then learning about the patient journey. So, from the phone call to booking the appointments, obviously we were a paper-based system at that time, which was really painful. And I had to my plan was to go computerized within 12 months. That came to within 3 months because it had to be done at that time. It was not even a negotiable for more efficiencies. Secondly, the most basic of things, the phone system. We had one line coming into the practice, and every software to be engaged. So, and yet when I was in the dental supplies business, we had 6, 7 lines and the fully modern phone system, so we could take as many calls as we needed to. And that straight away changed. 3 months again, it had to change. It couldn't carry on like that. And automatically, then this thing of having more patients. So we started getting more calls. Less people were on hold or engaged tone. All that went. So that really helped. Then we were paper based, and you could see the massive inefficiencies of a paper based system, which was notes on paper. So you're taking cards out, you're putting cards back. All that had to change, and we had to go paperless. There was no other way to become a volume based dental practice where you're seeing a high volume of patients, yet you want to serve them efficiently and serve them well. The paper system just didn't work, and it was actually a real waste of time when you look at the inefficient use of reception time. So that changed. With all these things, I could only appreciate by being at that coal face and actually doing that and seeing exactly where those bottlenecks were, where the problems were. And to be honest, it actually helped me even speak to patients in a different light, because a patient in a surgery is very different from a patient on reception. I mean, how many times have you heard that on your receptionist actually tell you what the patient is really thinking about you? Because when they come in the surgery, it's like, oh, Dr. Shah, how are you? This, that. And when they go there, it's like, oh, that was a really, bad experience. Or, how it is. It's like they will be honest with the receptionist. They will not be honest with you.
I love
And
how they think that you just never talk to them. Like
yeah,
that never makes its way back to you. It's interesting. They feel like they can confide in them, and that's very valuable data.
yeah,
Spot on.
it's so important. And that can get you out of predominantly a lot of trouble before, and also one thing I learned is that the reception team are very good at spotting red flag patients before they come in and have any, especially high value or say something like implants, and they will straight away flag it up. Are you sure you want to have this patient, or are you sure you want to have this treatment on this patient? And it's so important to listen to them because they have this intuition about who would be a problem patient or a red flag, and you have to listen to that. But no, it was just it's really nice to be at that coal face from time to time. And even once you've done the major stuff like your phone system, your computerization, going paperless, you always pick up small nuggets here and there, and it's all about adding little bits of efficiency to then slowly improve. And we have to improve every day. That is so important. We cannot be complacent that everything is working. So we're always improving. And that is,
Amazing.
yeah. And that insight you only get from being actually seated on that desk.
Very cool. So you're a big proponent of dentists taking some time
Yeah.
to spend some time on reception. Any
Yeah.
other areas of the practice that you identified? Any other important places that we should focus in order to make the business more efficient?
So one of the key things is communication with the team. And that is really important for me. So just this week, we took a whole day out, myself and the practice manager, and we had one-to-one chat with everybody. Just half an hour each person coming in, and it was really good. We picked up again some really good bits of information, and bits where so for example, we had a new lady starting on reception, and she said, I would really like to spend time in surgery, but to learn how the clean checks work, for example, or to learn what an implant is even, and how, or what a crown is. Now, in the day to day, to be honest, I hardly get even 5 minutes to speak to anybody when you're actually having a clinical day and rushing between patients and everything else. Yet having half an hour with her, and that having her being in surgery will then feed back onto reception when patients ask queries. For example, if a patient comes and says, can I have an implant, or would I be suitable, or what is involved? And she's in a much better position to tell the patients rather than just reading off a script or a textbook or something like that. So that, little bits like that always come out in these one-to-one chats. And it's so important to make time for the team to have these chats and be open to all communication and be open to even criticism, because it's not criticism, it's constructive. The beauty of a member of team who comes to you and tells you something's going wrong is they care. And the person who doesn't always come to you may not be the person who cares. So don't take that as, why is she telling me? Who is she to tell me? Who is he to tell me? Why is he telling me what's wrong with my practice? I know how to run this practice. It's not about that. It's about the bigger picture, and it's about the business. It's not about individuals.
I think you're so right. I think that way too often people take things like that personally, whereas actually they're a flipping gold mine for
Yeah.
constructive information that you can
Yes.
use to grow the business. It's a self awareness thing. If you
Yeah.
can see through your own operating system sometimes, right? Your operating system just wants you to maybe be offended because it somehow feels
Yeah.
that your status is diminishing, right? That's the chimp brain speaking, right? Your status is diminishing in the tribe is bad for you, right? According to our chimp brain. But it's not like that.
No.
You're misrecognizing that, right? And actually the reframe is to understand
Yeah.
how, if anything, it's going to make your dental practice better,
Yeah.
right? If you can
Yeah.
just see it through those pair of eyes and just not take it personally, see through your own operating system and develop that self-awareness that we spoke about earlier. Such an important thing, particularly in business, one of the best skills in my opinion. I was going to say something, right? What I've always noticed, that one thing that I think people could get a lot better at, and this is not just dentists, this is the flipping human race, right? Is to understand that if you're doing something and it's just not quite firing how you'd like it to, right? That in reality, there's probably a way to fix it that you
Yes.
can identify in one of two ways. You can either try to figure it out yourself, which you might get the answer quick, but in reality, you'll probably go through a lot of testing and
Yeah.
trial and erroring and iteration to get to the point that you want to get to.
Yeah.
Or you can just find a mentor or find
Yes.
somebody else who's done it before, right? Because they can literally come into your business, just say, there's your problem, bang,
Yes.
right?
No.
The whole point of a mentor is that you get to where you want to go. A good mentor, of course,
Yes.
is that you get to where you want to go, except like 30 times faster,
Yeah.
right? But
Absolutely.
dude, people
Absolutely.
people have a hang up, right, on giving someone else some money in order for that person to tell them what to do, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's like, logically, if you want to see your business succeed, which should be the overall goal, in my opinion, or it should be most people's main goal, because that's the point of a business. Number one, that it survives, and number two, that it makes profit, right?
Yeah.
Then we have to be able to let go of
Yes.
these things internally which are holding us back, right? And that's why I think mentors have such value. And
Yeah.
here's another unappreciated thing about mentors. Remember, they're an authority figure, right? So you're way more likely to actually listen to what they say, therefore actually do it, which
Yes.
means that you get results faster even still. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. No. So basically, post COVID, I actually started working with a coach myself within the business and looking at the whole team, how the calls were being answered, how the inquiries were being dealt, the whole workflow from lead coming in to lead being booked in to the chair side conversations and everything else. And we've had to change a lot in within the whole patient journey from reception to and we then have a full-time TCO. We have a full-time uh, practice manager who is not compliance based, so we have another lady for compliance, but her role is purely to look at the business side and see how the business is performing. But having that insight is so important, and working with a mentor. If I look at post COVID and pre COVID where we were, it's a totally different practice, and it could only happen in the space of 3 years or whatever with the presence of a mentor for me. And that is why it's so important to have somebody to mentor you, to guide you. And an external pair of eyes will always see things that you're totally blind to, and or you don't want to see. And that is where the tough love comes in, and listening to that and acting on it So, and again, like I said, my biggest weakness initially was I'd be very nice to everybody because I was too scared to lose people, not realizing that anybody who's going to go is going to go anyway. And so you can't keep everybody happy. But that was my biggest failure. Yet having this mentor come from outside and actually say that to me, to my face, you cannot be running a business like this, was painful initially, but I needed to hear it. And now my whole thinking around it all has changed. So mentor is so valuable, so valuable.
all
Yes,
the
it costs
way.
money, but it's an investment. It's not a cost. And that investment comes back to you year on year. It's not even a one-time investment. It's a year-on-year investment.
Ah, well, sorry. Perhaps it's a one-time investment, but it's a year-on-year return. That's what.
Year-on-year return.
There
Sorry.
you
Yep.
go. Boom.
That's my, yes, year-on-year return. Yeah.
Boom. Here's the thing. Here, most people's mindset, right? See this all the time. Most people's mindset think once before spending, think twice before investing. Why is it not the other way around? Why is it not think twice before spending, think once before investing? At least an investment has a chance of making its way back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even
Yep.
if it doesn't, right? Okay, that's still data. That thing didn't work out. Now you're closer to finding the thing that will work out, right? It's all about reframe. So important.
Yeah.
We Speaking of frameworks, we talked about frameworks. We talked about a framework just a second ago, the framework for increasing profitability in any business. Those three ways.
Yes.
There's only three ways: reduce costs, serve more customers, or serve more patients in a dental practice, or increase the value of each one of those patients, right? So we've talked about increasing the value of each one of those patients, and the way that we've talked about, the ways that we've explored today are largely to do with efficiency and understanding your business. Let's go back to the first one, which is reducing costs, which is actually very, very important as well. And I know that you've got some interesting insight on that, given your experience in the dental supply industry.
So that for me, when I first got into the dental practice ownership, was bringing that side of the knowledge straight away into the business. And we managed to slash the cost by about 35 to 40% just by negotiating well with all the suppliers. All the suppliers have a margin. So if it's their own brand products, remember they have at least 50% margin to play with. So when they say, I'm going to give you 20% off, that is rubbish because on own brand, they can actually give you 50% off and they'll still do very well out of it. So it's important to understand that own brand products make sure go for 50% off those products. On the branded products, they don't have as much margin, but they get a lot of kickbacks from the manufacturers. So they need to sell, for example, 100,000 of Dentsply to get 10% free stock for them or something like that, or 3M or everybody else. So once they are hitting those targets, they want to hit those targets so they get more free stock. So that is where you can negotiate, especially free stock offers from your suppliers. And for example, if you're buying an expensive, say ProTemp 4, for example, which is about £60 a cartridge, if you're getting a 2+1 on that, that's 33% saving just there. So you can really save money by getting free stock on branded products. And that really works well. And it worked well for us. Again, fixing prices of all your consumables. So your gloves, your masks, all that. If you get it on a fixed price, it makes a huge difference. So you know what you're paying. Yes, the costs of those have really increased over the past couple of years, but it's still better. Your fixed pricing should still be better than what your pricing would be otherwise. And it's important to understand the margins involved in all these products. And that for me was huge. And we managed to bring down the costs quite a bit. Obviously, in this inflationary time, prices have gone up quite a bit, but we're still, I would say, paying below average pricing on most things still.
Very cool. So it's about negotiating what you're paying the suppliers. And here's the thing, this is what's interesting because you've seen it from both sides. How many dentists can say that they've worked in the supply industry and been a principal? Really
Yeah.
cool. Any other bits of wisdom on
Uh,
reducing costs?
yeah. So obviously, certain costs you're not going to be able to bring down at the moment. So for example, we all know that our staffing bill is going up. Our energy bills have gone up a lot. But again, even on these things to control these. So for example, the other day I had my energy broker come to me with an offer that was actually about 35% or so cheaper than what we were paying for gas. And yes, it's a fixed price, but it's worth going to these brokers. And I know some of them can be a pain and they keep on hounding you, but there are some really good ones out there. And going to them and saying, what can you get me? And to be honest, there are still deals to be had on all these things to reduce your costs. Definitely. And, simple things like your insurance costs. Shop around. There's lots of insurances out there. You could save £300-400 a year just on that, which in the grand scheme is not a lot, but still allows it all to add on. Speaking to your labs as well, say, seeing what they can offer you. And yes, we're all used to our labs, and that is, we don't want to compromise the quality that we give our patients. But there's still a little bit of a margin to be had, and even just a simple conversation, and you might get £10 off. Your crowns, which over the year adds up with that same lab. So little bits make a big difference in all these things.
I 100% agree. I actually think that of the three things that we talked about earlier, reducing costs, increasing patients,
Yeah.
and increasing the value of each patient, increasing the value of the people that we serve. Yeah. I think that of those three ways, often our head gets turned by the increasing turnover
Yes.
pair, the second two. Yeah. Yeah. Increasing turnover is way more sexy than reducing costs.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But
Yeah.
it's actually reducing costs is very, very, very
It's
important
important.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Super important. Right.
Yeah.
Because then it means that there's less, it's less of a dice roll every single month that you're going to be able to meet your outgoings.
Yeah.
You're reducing that pressure on yourself, right? Which is the fortitude mentally that you get from that is
Yes.
flipping amazing, right? And I actually didn't really fully appreciate that, I reckon, until maybe a little later on in my business journey. Super,
Yeah.
super, super important, which is why the things that you've just shared will be very, very, very useful. Simal, we're coming up to the 40-minute mark. I like to keep these things bite-sized around about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Anything that you'd like to say just to wrap up today?
No, just thanks a lot, James, for the opportunity and to speak to you. And one thing I will say to everybody out there, like what James touched on, get a mentor, get somebody who you can talk to, who can guide you. Because remember, life is lonely at the top. A lot of people won't come to you, and it doesn't have to be. And don't make the same mistakes which some of us practice owners have made over the years, and in the hope that things will work out, or you can get to a very, very good level in your business very quickly just by having a mentor on board. And don't hesitate to take that step, because it will make a huge difference to everybody out there.
Cool, 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 cool. Anybody who's listening, if you want to reach out to Simal off the back of this podcast, feel free to do so. Simal Shah on the Dentist Who Invest Facebook group, and Simal will be happy to go over everything that we said today on a one-to-one basis. Simal, thank you so much for your time. Let's catch up super, super soon, my friend. See you later.
Thanks, James.